morning. I'm Regina Lay, standing in for Ces Oreña-Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The big stories tonight coming from the Senate, from a leadership shakeup that fizzled to the tourism secretary being called out for self-promotion.
And over at the House of Representatives, the vote on the sufficiency of substance of the president's impeachment complaints is deferred. But this early, some lawmakers are already predicting it will be dismissed.
And former senator and billionaire Manny Villar vehemently denies that his family engaged in market manipulation and insider trading, rejecting all of the SEC's allegations.
Lumilitaw na ikaw ay nagiging vlogger na, puro mukha mong nakalagay doon.
My presence there was a legitimate one, and it was to help the destination. I am not running for any national position. There would be no reason for me to promote myself.
Well, suffice to say, it was not at all a pleasant hearing for Tourism Secretary Cristina Frasco today. During a hearing of the Senate Committee on Tourism, Senator Raffy Tulfo criticized Frasco sharply for self-promotion.
And by that, he means the magazines and billboards that carried Frasco's image instead of the country's tourist spots. Many of these have become memes and have gone viral on social media.
But Frasco insisted these were not her doing. Another issue that was tackled today was the unreasonably high fares for domestic flights. Mobile journalist Marimon Reyes with tonight's Big Story.
The slogan reads, "Love the Philippines." But in the photo, not a single destination in Manila or any province, but that of Tourism Secretary Cristina Frasco. Her image was on the cover of a Japanese magazine. Secretary Frasco even has a photo at the airport and one riding a boat. All these snapshots were presented by Senator Raffy Tulfo on Tuesday's hearing on the tourism sector and the many issues it faces.
I'm very sorry, Secretary Frasco. Parang lumilitaw na ikaw ay nagiging vlogger na. It will not sell pag doon sa mga marketing materials natin, puro mukha mong nakalagay doon. Ipakita po natin yung mga tanawin o yung mga reasons why tourists will visit the country.
But Frasco explained, this was not her idea nor her doing.
The magazine that bore my image, called Philippine Topics, that was published in Japan and subsequently distributed for free, absolutely had no consent, funding, or information on the part of myself or on the part of the Department of Tourism.
But what about this photo at Boracay Airport? Frasco explained it was just a welcome tarpaulin for a tourism project on the island which she helped launch. Then, yet another photo that has gone viral. And just like all the other snaps have become memes, this one in Lake Cebu at South Cotabato, where Frasco is seen on a boat.
How about Miss Cotabato instead of you? Nakilala sa lugar na yan. Bakit hindi na lang po yung isang native na kilala ng mga tao na kapag nakita nila, agad-agad maintindihan nila bakit siya nandyan as opposed to ikaw.
The photos that have been used and transformed into memes are actually work photos.
Is that AI? You're telling me that's AI?
No.
Okay.
This is a work photo. I was in Lake Cebu in South Cotabato promoting the Philippine Experience program. My presence there was a legitimate one, and it was to help the destination.
Frasco also insisted that she has no reason to promote herself. But this only sparked a heated discussion between her and Tulfo.
Any accusation of self-promotion would fall flat because I am not running for any national position in 2028, and therefore there would be no reason for me to promote myself.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not saying that you're running. Don't put words into my mouth. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, yung po nakakalata yung mga tao na parang pinopromote yung sarili mo for whatever reason. Now, also, ma'am, compared to other countries like Vietnam, Korea, Malaysia, Japan, hindi niyo po nakikita yung mukha ng mga secretaries ng Department of Tourism nila doon eh. Wala, never.
Perhaps if it is the pleasure of the senator that I no longer visit our destinations or that there be no coverage of the same, we can take that into serious consideration.
Of course, ma'am, you can visit. Why not? But what we are saying here, ma'am, please, huwag mo i-promote yung sarili mo. Pag pumunta ko na sa isang lugar, kung ano.
In the end, Frasco said she's willing to send over to Tulfo's office a detailed report on what the DOT has achieved for the country's tourism. In the same hearing, the issue of exorbitant airfares to local tourist destinations was also raised. Several netizens have pointed out that vacations abroad have become more affordable than trips around the Philippines.
There is a glaring disconnect between our marketing and our reality. Pero paano ito mangyayari kung ang presyo ng flight patungong Siargao o Palawan ay mas mahal pa kaysa lumpad patungong ibang bansa? One-way ticket to Siargao can cost as much as 18,000 to 20,000 pesos, while a round trip to Japan or Hong Kong is significantly cheaper.
The Air Carriers Association of the Philippines, or ACAP, explains that infrastructure problems add unnecessary costs, such as limited runways for tourist spots. In Siargao and Basco, Batanes, only small planes could fit runways, only a few passengers accommodated. Thus, more expensive fares. The DOT adds that the airline industry has been deregulated since 2011, something they suggest to lawmakers should be reviewed to regulate plane fares. Kapatid Mobile journalist Mary Monregues, we are One News.
In other news, talk of another Senate leadership change took a more serious tone today after Senate President Tito Soto himself confirmed that someone else has been asked to replace him. Soto revealed he learned of the alleged offer directly from Senator Loren Legarda, who was approached by undisclosed members of the minority bloc just the other day. And asked what exactly transpired, Soto declined to give further details but said that Legarda told him she was not interested in the offer. Despite the latest move to unseat him, Soto said the entire majority bloc remains very solid.
And totoo ba na tinanggil yung Senate presidency kay Senator Loren? You have that information?
I heard that. I was told.
You were told by Sen. Loren?
Yes.
Well, what exactly happened, SP?
Actually, I'd rather not dwell into it already. Ayoko lang kapag-usapan yung mga... Kasi just, they were merely talks. So...
Pero inalok yung Senate presidency kay Sen. Loren. That's what
I was told.
Sinabi ba ni Sen. Loren kung anong naging response po niya?
Pinakamaganda, sinabi niya hindi siya interesado.
So, hindi delikadong lumipat ng bakod si Sen. Loren kasi solid ba siya sa inyo?
Oo. Oo naman. Ang buong majority namin very solid. As a matter of fact, baka mga dalawa sa mga hindi namin kasama dati, baka mapasama ko eh.
May kumakausap daw sa inyo, ma'am?
Ang daming kumakausap sa akin araw-araw.
Ako.
Lahat naman kinakausap ko. Teka. Medyo pag-isip ko yung tinanong ko kasi nabasa ko yung news.
Before this confirmation by Soto, Senate President pro tempore Ping Lacson called out what he described as a malicious and sadistic narrative to smear Legarda. Lacson claims that after efforts to entice Legarda with the Senate presidency failed, those behind the supposed leadership coup are spreading the lie that she volunteered to help them gather support. Posts on social media over the weekend hinted at another leadership change in the Senate, allegedly due to the dissatisfaction with Soto's leadership. Yesterday, Senate Minority Leader Alan Peter Cayetano admitted that there have been discussions about the direction of the upper chamber, though they still did not have the numbers to oust Soto. Soto said he knows that his being strict with budget insertions as well as changes in the committee chairmanships could have been the source of discontent among his colleagues. But a possible second impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte could also be in play. Minority member Senator Robin Padilla said it plain and simple.
You see the need to change leadership?
Sa ngayon?
Opo.
Or satisfied kayo? Okay naman ako. Wala naman akong masasabi sa ngayon. Ay, siyempre.
Bakit po?
Hindi naman siguro kailasan man sa inyo. Ayaw ko ng impeachment. Hindi ba obvious? Siyempre, kailangan...
For the minority.
Sana, inshallah, God willing.
And
pro-bayan.
But supportive of VP Sara?
Of course.
Yun yung gusto niyo maging SP. Just to be clear po.
Wala na tayong plastikan. Diba?
Meanwhile, Senators Kiko Pangilinan and Rodante Marcoleta again locked horns in a heated debate. This time, the two clashed over Senate Resolution 256, seeking to condemn recent public statements issued by the Embassy of the People's Republic of China. Recall the two had been trading barbs on the boundaries of the West Philippine Sea, and PCG spokesperson Commodore J. Tariela's role on the issue.
Si Commodore Tariela po ba ginawan ng caricatures or effigy yung mga heads of state ng Vietnam, ng Malaysia, at iba pang karatig bansa?
Hindi kailangan, Mr. President, dahil wala naman silang pag-water cannon sa atin.
Alam po ba ng ating honorable gentleman from Pampanga and Quezon City na pag ginamit po natin yung West Philippine Sea na 200 nautical mile limit ng ating exclusive economic zone, 17 features po ng Calayan Island Group ang mawawala.
Are we trying to say here that the arbitral ruling was erroneous, and therefore we should stop claiming what was awarded us? I don't see the logic, Mr. President.
I know that being bombastic, Tariela earns him likes and makes him probably feel like a rock star, Mr. President. I know national anger sells newspapers. I know mindless patriotism wins.
The very least that we should do as a Senate is rally behind our Department of National Defense and our men in uniform who risk their very lives to defend the West Philippine Sea, Mr. President.
All right, now before we go on to our other stories, this breaking news has just come in. This is also coming from the Senate. And the Blue Ribbon Committee released and then withdrew a partial report on the alleged on the charges over the alleged anomalies in the flood control projects. The withdrawn document was recommended to the Ombudsman the investigation and filing of charges for malversation of public funds against several former and current lawmakers. So again, this is just to emphasize that this is a draft that was released but later withdrawn because 3 of the signatories withdrew their signatures because apparently there were still changes to be made. But nevertheless, it's interesting to see that there are 6 lawmakers on this list. None of these names are new to us. These are former Congressman Zaldi Ko, former Senator Bong Revilla, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Chiz Escudero, and former Representative Mitch Kahayon Uy.
Of course, we're familiar with the... There we go. You can also catch this on our Facebook page, One News, if you want to, really digest the names. But some of the intermediaries named also, of course, we have Yusek, Trigiv Olaivar from the DepEd. We have Maynard Ngu. These are the familiar names we've been hearing in the hearings. There's also Carlene Yap, J.Y. De La Rosa, a so-called quote-unquote Mrs. Patron, Lauren Cruz, John Paul Estrada. So a lot of unfamiliar names as well.
And administrative charges have also been recommended for DPWH officials. You have their former Secretary Manuel Bonoan and even the deceased former Undersecretary Maria Catalina Cabral. Now, these are recommendations for charges of grave misconduct and serious dishonesty, even unexplained wealth and other appropriate administrative offenses.
For DPWH, actually, we're talking both administrative and criminal charges. For Bonoan and Cabral, we're looking at malversation of public funds, direct bribery, plunder, Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, violation of that, violation of, and 3 counts of violation against the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, and also a violation of the Ethical Code of Conduct for public officials and employees. That's for former Sec Bonoan and the late Cathy Cabral, the late USEC Cathy Cabral.
So there's also a list of the owners, officers, and or representatives of private contractors. 5 are listed here so far. We have, of course, Curly Descaya of St. Timothy Construction Corporation. We have Maria Roma Angeline Rimando, also of St. Timothy. Of course, Sara Descaya, also St. Timothy, and Mark Alan Arevalo from Wawa Builders, and Robert Imperio, the owner and manager of IM Construction Corporation. So the charges recommended: malversation of public funds, direct bribery, plunder, and also...
It's a long list of charges that they are recommending. But aside from these names that we've discussed, the committee is actually also recommending further fact-finding for a couple of names, there, including former Speaker Martin Romualdez They noted here that while these public officials and personalities were identified during the course of the hearings, they still want further fact-finding and investigation to be done by the Ombudsman to really determine their specific roles in this entire scandal. Also listed here are Senators Grace Poe, or former Senator Nancy Binay. There's also Representative Rida Robes, former Senator Sunny Angara, Senator Mark Villar, and many more.
That's a long list of it.
As we said, these names are all familiar to those of us who've been following the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings for months now, except I would say personally with the exception of Robert Imperio, the owner and manager of IM Construction Corporation. I have not heard him testify in Senate as of yet, so I'm not sure what he looks like even and what his involvement in this is. Although, of course, IM was identified as one of those that cornered a lot of flood control projects.
But as we know, of course, all of these would have to do with the first two provinces involved that were investigated, Bulacan and Mindoro.
Bulacan and, correct,
Mindoro.
Oriental Mindoro. But really, all eyes will be on the list of legislators that are on this list. Co, Revilla, Estrada, Villanueva, Escudero, and Cahayon Uy. Again, all of these names have come up repeatedly during the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee. All of them have vehemently denied any knowledge of or involvement in anomalies in the flood control projects, and it's going to be down to the prosecutors and the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee to prove these allegations, because these are all serious crimes. But again, let me emphasize as well, this is just a draft. It was earlier released to the media, but then later withdrawn because 3 of the signatories withdrew their signatures. Allegedly, apparently, this will still be discussed during Senate plenary in the coming days. So we'll wait for changes to this.
That's right. Those 3 senators who withdrew their signatures are J.V. Ejercito, Wen Gatchalian, and Migs Zubiri.
And interestingly, Senate President Tito Soto, I think this is his message to reporters. He said, that's just a draft, malayo sa tunay. Tomorrow or Thursday pa ang partial. So
do not be
not
misled.
sure how
May ganun pa siya. Do
far
not
it
be
is from-
misled.
Kaya nga, I'd be really curious how far could it be from what the final charges will be, right? Final list of charges will be.
And what will determine that? Kasi wala
none
namang
of this-
hearing that
oh.
could change this. You know what I mean? Like,
Baka may negotiations behind the scenes. I don't know. I'm just,
well, that's going to be the juicy part then, diba? Let's see how far it moves on.
Exactly.
All right, well, moving on to another story. Tycoon Manny Villar has denied allegations of market abuse involving Villar Land Holdings, saying neither he nor his companies engaged in illegal practices. In a statement, the former senator said Villar Land has yet to receive the criminal complaint filed by the SEC with the Justice Department over alleged false or misleading statements that supposedly defrauded investors. Still, Villar said, our company has consistently upheld the highest standards of good corporate governance. In fact, we welcomed and fully cooperated when the SEC began its fact-finding investigation. He added, in all my years as an entrepreneur, I have never engaged in illegal practices designed to defraud customers and investors.
The statement comes
Luis Limlingan. Good evening, Luis. Welcome to the Big Story. Long time no see. Oh, I can't see you because you're on the phone.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for having me on the show. And it's been a while, no?
It's been a very long while, but I know we took off from the Villar case, but I'm not going to ask you too much about that because I understand the case is ongoing. It's in fact, the SEC cited the sub judice rule on us when we invited them to speak about it, which means because the case is already filed or with the DOJ, they don't want to speak on it any further to avoid any prejudice or bias. But one thing that we have gotten asked about a lot is what are all these charges about, right? Insider trading, market manipulation, and misleading disclosures. Talk us through that for those who don't understand how the markets work.
Well, these are terms that are used in the market, no? When we hear of insider trading, this usually happens when a person or entity trades a company's stock. And what's important is that they use material and non-public information. That's very important because this information could supposedly affect the stock price positively or negatively. And that's why it's an insider, because you're the only one who has the info on that stock. An example of this is just probably, a company executive who has shares or prior earnings, prior knowledge about the company's earnings, decides to buy the stock before it's released. This could affect the company, right? And in these cases, it's illegal because it gives an unfair advantage to the other people who don't have that access to the public information.
Okay. Hi, Luis. Are you still there? Can you hear us?
Yes. I hope you're able to catch everything.
Yes, we were able to. So there is insider trading. You discussed that. Now, how does that lead to market manipulation?
Well, market manipulation and insider trading aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. When it's market manipulation, this is when someone or probably an entity, they influence the price. And it's different. It can be different from insider trading because that influence is usually artificial. And they're common types. If you've been around the market, there are certain that you might be at they call pump and dump, where you hype a stock, sell it at the top, while others are holding the company at or the stock at a loss. There's spoofing, or when you place big orders to people that there is artificial demand. There's even just spreading rumors about the stock just to hype it up. So these types of manipulation, it can be done by individuals or even a large syndicate, just to give the appearance that there is a hype going around the stock, so people will get involved in it.
Okay, well, a lot of people, were familiar at the beginning of this whole mess with the valuations, right, of one of the Villar-led companies. How much did that have to do with this whole mess and all these cases that the Villar empire is facing right now?
Well, it is assumed that the, let's say, company disclosures or financial statements, when they are published, they are supposed to be very factual or, without misleading the public. And they even use independent auditors for that. So it is assumed that everything, all the information that is public, reflects the company. So if there is any false information that is published, it will mislead everyone, and especially if you slant it to the positive, people will be buying into the stock, right? So that's what that is what makes posting all this false information very bad for the market, because it erodes the trust and confidence in investors.
Okay, but Luis, walk us through the process. What are some of the red flags regulators look at to substantiate, let's say, insider trading, as well as to determine whether public disclosures have been misleading investors?
Well, when it comes to insider trading, usually I think independent bodies look at the price action movement. So, for example, if there is news that will affect the company, but the price suddenly reacts before it comes out, then it could be suspicious. It could be suspicious. I'm not saying that it will lead to or it is a result of insider trading, but sometimes that could be one of the key giveaways. So auditors look at that. And then let's say maybe a particular broker or account has been making all the right moves, especially when timing the buying or the selling of the stock, then maybe it's open to some suspicion because how can that person be very good? Nobody in the market has claimed to make 100% of the right move. So anyone who probably does that, especially when it's been doing it over a long or substantial time, probably is going to invite some suspicion.
So it really, these charges, they really sound like I'm trying to rack my brain to think of anyone who's been convicted or baka hindi lang na-publicize.
I would like to think it's not yet publicized because it's very hard to also prove that as well. Because there are other ways to layer it. For example, let's say, someone who works in a listed company knows about that information. They could pass it on to someone, right? And then maybe there's a way to cover the track. These people, we have to also understand, I think they might know the rules and intricacies, so they probably also try to cover their track. So that's why I think it's also very hard to do that, and that's why the PSE, CMIT try to make the rules very rigid and try to promote transparency. Also make a very thorough audit of the brokers to see that there's no suspicious behavior between counterparties and clients.
Yeah. I have faith the SEC will get to the bottom of this mess. But one last question before we let you go. What are you forecasting the markets to be at? I mean, I know the last time Shawn and I maybe spoke to you, it was going the right way, right? It was heading towards
9,000.
Yeah, 10,000.
Yeah.
And now obviously it's not in a good place. It's fallen back down to 6,400, 6,500 levels. What are the positive catalysts that you're seeing, if any?
Okay, for starters, I think there is a valuation gap. Obviously, let's get the obvious out of the way, in that we were the laggard last year when compared to Asia. But we can see is that I think the foreign funds are holding off from buying, especially year-end, because it's very hard to defend your position to buy into a losing market at the end of the year to your bosses. Whereas now at the beginning of the year, it's late, and I think that's why they see that there is an opportunity in the Philippines. Now, we look at the economic print, and it has been rather disappointing to say the least. But I think it's an opportunity that now that we have exposed the problems, especially with the government spending, maybe the government will also try to ramp up. And given the low base that we experienced in the second half, perhaps maybe with that, we might be able to rebound and perform much better than the Aspen peer.
So all is not lost yet.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll leave that there. Thank you so much for talking to us tonight and explaining all of those technical issues. That was Regina Capital's Head of Sales, Luis Limbingan. Thanks, Luis.
We're just going to take a quick break, but coming up, discussions on the substance of the impeachment complaints against President Bongbong Marcos will see another day. But one lawmaker says his colleagues agree it's an exercise in futility. We have that and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back to the big story. The first impeachment complaint against President Bongbong Marcos has hit a snag after the House Committee on Justice deliberated its substance. Members of the committee said the president cannot be impeached and removed from office for allegedly allowing the kidnapping and surrender of former President Rodrigo Duterte to the ICC. This was among the allegations filed by lawyer Andre De Jesus and endorsed by House Deputy Minority Leader and Pusong Pinoy Party List Representative Journey Jet Nisay. Both majority and minority members of the committee agreed that the government legally carried out an ICC arrest warrant coursed through Interpol, that President Marcos cannot be impeached for enforcing such a warrant.
Be an overt act personally attributable to the president or the impeachable official.
Honorable Nisay, Honorable Padiernos is asking for the overt act committed by the president or the actual participation with regards to the alleged arrest and kidnapping.
I think yung dapak po na wala siyang ginawa.
There's no impeachable offense. We all know that there's no kidnapping. Second, the arrest was by virtue of an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court.
Justice Committee members also expressed skepticism that mere allegations of President Marcos's alleged drug addiction could qualify as an impeachable offense. Several lawmakers also criticized the evidence submitted by De Jesus, noting that it consisted largely of news articles.
This is a clear example of not a recital of facts, but a conclusion of fact not based on any evidence. There is no evidence that the president is using drugs. Only statements of some persons.
Senator Amy, the sister, admitted or alleged or announced that PBBM is a drug addict. Again, this is not a factual allegation, but a conclusion that because Senator Amy admitted or announced that PBBM is an addict, then he must be an addict.
Today's lengthy deliberations on De Jesus's complaint has prompted the Justice Committee to defer the voting on the complaints to tomorrow, Wednesday. The committee has yet to discuss the second impeachment complaint by former Gabriela Representative Liza Maza, and which was endorsed by Makabayan Bloc lawmakers.
To me, it is actually an exercise in futility. The majority of the committee will be voting in favor of the insufficiency of substance. Sa akin, no, personally speaking, I should be dismissed in the committee. Sa committee lang, hindi darating sa plenary yan.
Meantime, a law expert has warned of the dangers of pursuing simultaneous impeachments against both the president and the vice president. To talk more, let's bring in Professor Paulo Tamase of the UP College of Law. Good evening, Professor. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, good evening, Regina, and everyone, and to your viewers.
Okay, so let's get right to the point. The dangers of simultaneous impeachments against the top two officials of the land. What is the danger here?
I think the Constitution itself accommodates a situation where both the president and the vice president are subject to impeachment proceedings. But if there's any danger, then it's really political in character. You're giving Congress effectively a weapon to use against one or of the two or both highest officials in government. There's also potentially instability in the proceedings, right? Your two highest officials, both the chief executive and the person who can replace the chief executive, are subject to this procedure might end in removal. And so there's that pressure. But on the whole, I think the Constitution that we have accommodates this process.
Okay, but Professor, let's discuss the events that took place today at the House of Representatives. They held their second hearing on the two impeachment complaints of President Bongbong Marcos, although only the first one was tackled today. How high or low is the threshold for determining the sufficiency in substance of impeachment complaints?
My understanding, even based on past congressional practice, it's a low standard. It means, and if you look at the House rules, it only tests whether there are allegations that would rise to the level of an impeachable offense. So we're not talking about the evidence yet. We're not talking about the truthfulness of the statements there, although I think there was some debate earlier this afternoon, or I think late this morning, about whether they would look already into the truthfulness of those allegations. But on the whole, we're just checking whether the acts complained of would rise to the level of such an offense that would render the public officer unfit to continue in office. So it's a low threshold. Usually it's a preliminary step that we're looking into before we actually bother the parties to present their evidence.
But what did you make of the deliberations that took place earlier today? Are you seeing any indicators that this will hurdle this step, this stage, or are you seeing that this possibly could get dismissed?
Just based on the statements that were being made in the committee hearing today, it might be dismissed, at least as to the first complaint. If you want to look closer, I think there's some consensus, at least, that the act of enforcing the ICC arrest warrant against President Duterte did not rise to the level of an impeachable offense because it was pursuant to a warrant issued by an international court. On the other hand, the supposed drug use was solely based on statements made in public and probably in frustration by the president's sister, Senator Marcos. And so just based on these, it might not yet show that the president is incapable or unfit to continue serving as president.
What I want to ask you, Attorney Tamase, is what happens, let's say they do decide to junk the first complaint altogether. Is there going to be any possible hurdle on hearing the second impeachment complaint against the president from the Makabayan bloc? Because consolidation, I'm not sure if that's still a gray area, or is it not a gray area anymore? What are your thoughts on that?
I think if we look at the Supreme Court decisions, and not only this January 2026 resolution, but the entire body of Supreme Court decisions fairly, there should be no hurdle to hearing the second complaint. It's because these two complaints were referred at the same time to the Committee on Justice. And if we follow old precedent concerning this, then that referral would still just constitute one initiation. So I don't think there's really a serious ground to prevent the discussion of the substance of the second complaint.
Okay, another clarification. Can they just junk certain articles but not all, or is it all or nothing?
That's possible. They can pick and choose which articles to forward. So you have to remember that when this process goes on, the House is not going to endorse to the plenary an impeachment complaint. What they're going to present is a report to the plenary saying that based on their hearings, these are the impeachable offenses that were committed, or alternatively, that the president did not commit any of those impeachable offenses. So when that gets to the plenary, what is voted on is actually the report. If 1/3 agree to support a report that would recommend the filing of impeachment or to proceed to the Senate for trial, then that would be sufficient. But then again, you're just looking at the report, not at the article, not at the complaint rather that was originally filed.
With the report, one last clarification. When that report goes to plenary, can they vote? Do they have to vote on it like all or nothing too? Or can they take it apart and discuss it in plenary?
I think, and we go by the practice of the House, they would vote on the report in its entirety. Whether they would be able to push through with all articles all the way to the decision to convict or not to convict in the Senate, that would be left to the House's discretion. But ultimately, it's a thumbs up or thumbs down on the report.
Speaking of the January 2026 Supreme Court ruling, we haven't had a chance to ask you, what did you think of it? I know there's been a lot of teeth gnashing in the legal industry about whether or not there was a judicial overreach. And I'm asking you specifically because you teach constitutional law.
That is the phrase of the week, right? Or the weekend, the concept of judicial overreach. And I think it might actually be useful to start with that concept. So judicial overreach just basically says that the court has exceeded the power that it has been granted under the Constitution. And the power is quite clear to any lawyer. It's the power, it includes the power to review grave abuse of discretion, but at the same time, it's still subject to the limits that, you know, you have to respect other branches of government. You have to acknowledge sometimes that they have an exclusive power over certain prerogatives. So my sense is that the decision, as we all know by now, didn't really change the result. And my problem is that while the decision, I think, correctly walked back from a lot of the dangerous language in the 2025 July decision, it still changed certain aspects, which I think were, with all due respect, irregular. So these aspects of the decision or the ruling of the court here seem to reverse some things that they already established in July, and yet the result would be the same. So that's one issue, right? Like with the court's adjudication, are parties given enough opportunity to actually contest the reasons for the decisions for or against them? But I think the larger question that has been looming on many people's minds, and even to my surprise, to even a lot of lawyers' minds, is this a point where the court has overstepped its limitations in the Constitution? And that's a fair question to ask. While we do give our courts a lot of leeway to intervene in the legal and even political processes, impeachment was really just one of those things where it really respected Congress. And while it walked back from a lot of the dangerous language from the July 2025 decision, it still seemed to impose certain rules on Congress, which didn't look like, you know, it was treating Congress as a co-equal branch. So these are fair questions to ask about our system of government. Is the court itself being checked by the political branches?
And one thing that's being debated really is the term session day. I know the Supreme Court has redefined that in their latest resolution, saying that a session day is a calendar day. But as we all know, in Congress, it means different. Should Congress here assert their definition? Can they still clarify that with the Supreme Court? I know that in the SC's resolution, they said it was final. No more MRs will be entertained. But can anything still be done, attorney?
So, 2 points. First, on the legal point, there is no further action on the part of Congress, I think, right? Unless it argues that the resolution in January 2026 was a completely new decision, and therefore it would have some right to file a motion for reconsideration, which is itself a contestable issue. I don't think there's anything that's coming out of the Supreme Court for now. But that doesn't mean that Congress is left powerless. I think you see in the dynamic in Congress some insistence that it is their prerogative, and that despite the court's ruling on this, they might treat that ruling as not really particularly binding on them, especially because if they interpret their power over impeachment or to initiate impeachment as exclusive. But the second thing that to consider is really is the strategic point. Is there a point going against the Supreme Court's particular ruling on the session days or any part of the decision at this point? Remember that the decision in July and in January principally concerned the second mode of impeachment, the one by verified resolution, which is a fast track, express lane type of impeachment. The one we have now involves more tedious hearings, and therefore it might be good to just focus on what's going on in the House now rather than try to oppose the court by insisting on the process for the second mode.
Attorney, your thoughts on the second impeachment complaint? You already expressed your skepticism as well on the first one. What's the chances of the second one, you think?
I would like to go back to what Congressman Abante said, which, this is an exercise in futility. I don't necessarily think it's a zero-sum game. Even if you have a majority in the House, those hearings may proceed. It's still an opportunity for the complainant to put before the public serious allegations of wrongdoing. And my own sense is if the evidence is strong and the evidence is already apparent as early as the filing stage and the complaint is shared with the public, then Congress itself might be under pressure to show complete fairness when it comes to hearing it. So it's not necessarily 1-0, numbers game. But as to the allegation itself, I would imagine that the main opposition of some members of the majority might be that the president isn't shown to have personal culpability or personal responsibility over the things alleged in the second complaint, and that might well be the point of argument for when they hear the second complaint.
Coming back to the Supreme Court decision, Prof, you touched on something very important, I think. Not that we know the answer, but who checks the Supreme Court, right? What recourse do people have at this point? But we're running out of time, and really my question to you is, do you agree with Senate President Tito Soto that impeachment is now an impossible dream, given this new jurisprudence? And I should also add that we spoke to Constitution framer Attorney Rene Sarmiento, who said that this decision basically has emasculated the impeachment as a tool for exacting accountability. Where do you stand on that?
I wouldn't go to say that it's an impossible dream. Maybe in very clear cases, impeachment might still work. But in cases where you actually need to do a little more legwork to show that something's wrong with this impeachable officer, I would agree that it's a lot harder to do it now. And it's because you've opened up avenues for the court to intervene at every stage. And you see how that affects impeachment cases, right? It slows down an impeachment case. It gives either the House or the Senate an excuse to delay the proceeding. And, that doesn't seem to really fit with the original design of this accountability mechanism.
So it has weakened the tool of impeachment as a method for exacting accountability.
Yes, I tend to agree with that. And this is because impeachment is addressed it's not just for the president or the vice president. It's also against officials like the court and constitutional commissions. And there's a lot of language in the recent decision which might slow down impeachable complaints. So, for example, you have the court setting rules there for collegial bodies. That was not an issue in the petitions, but the court saw it fit to lay out rules this time that for impeachment in those cases that may well apply to them. So it's certainly weakened as an accountability mechanism.
Is there anything at all that you approve of in the final ruling of the Supreme Court that you think actually has or contributes to the improvement of the impeachment process as an accountability measure?
To the improvement, none. Right? I'll be very frank about it. And it's really just academic, being blunt academic about this thing. But I think it did cure one problem with the July decision, which is the July decision removed political from the characterization of impeachment. You see the court walking back a bit, right? It says legal, political, and constitutional. And that's basically everything. But the point is that it returned political to the forefront. And that's a small change. It's a one-word addition. But it really sort of walks closer to the original framework. And yet, for all of the reasons we've talked about, I think impeachment still has changed for good.
Well, finally, Professor, talks on charter change are being floated once again. What is your stand on that?
Is it time?
I've never been close to the idea of talking about whether the Constitution is still current. It's important for democracies to actually talk about whether their Constitution is still current and still addresses their people's needs. But there's also some history tells us to be cautious about charter change. It's not to say no to all forms of charter change, but to see the motives behind it. So charter change has been used in the past to extend presidential terms or to concentrate power. If those are not the motives, and if there are fair proposals, then we should talk about them. But the public should be very careful and cautious when we talk about changing our fundamental law, despite what has happened to impeachment.
Fair enough. We shall leave that there. Thank you so much for explaining all of that to us. That was Professor Paulo Tamase of the UP College of Law.
Well, Malacanang says President Bongbong Marcos is careful not to overstep his authority, even as he supports efforts to make accessible the SALNs of those implicated in the flood control scam. According to Palace Press Officer Claire Castro, while the president is dismayed at the red tape, he does not want a so-called executive overreach. Castro added that Marcos understands each department has its own rules and that there's a separation of powers between the executive and Congress, which they need to respect. Recall that Ombudsman Boying Remulla said his office is having difficulty obtaining the SALNs of lawmakers linked to the flood control scam, despite Civil Service Commission rules authorizing his office to secure records showing a public official's SALNs. Remulla was allegedly told access to House members' SALNs requires plenary approval. He said he would write to Speaker Boji D to clarify the process.
Maliwanag po na ang gusto po ng Pangulo ay transparency and accountability. Pero may kanya-kanya pong rules na sinusunod ang bawat departamento. Meron po tayong separation of powers na tinatawag at kung ano man po ang rules ng House of Representatives or Kongreso patungkol po dyan, yan po ay ginagalang ng Pangulo. Iniiwasan po ng Pangulo na magkaroon ng executive overreach.
As for the fate of the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, Castro said the president is now leaving it up to them to decide on their next steps, including if they were to hire more commissioners. And if it needs more funding or personnel to continue its work, Castro says the administration is prepared to provide the necessary support.
Ang sabi po niya, ang ICI daw po ay isang independent body, independent commission. Kung ano po ang magiging desisyon ng ICI, yun po ang maaari maging tugon ng Pangulo. Kung kinakailangan nila ng tulong sa executive, ibibigay po. Pero kung ano po ang magiging destiny ng ICI, kung ano ang magiging susunod na magalaw nila, yan po ay pinauubaya ng Pangulo sa ICI.
And let us end tonight's show with some entertainment news. After 20 years, 2 decades, fashion's most feared boss is back.
Who is this? Do you know her? Do I know her?
I'm Andy Sachs. Andrea?
She was one of the Emilys.
One of the what?
Our big picture tonight, the trailer of the sequel to the 2006 hit The Devil Wears Prada, which brings the runway icons back, this time with power dynamics flipped. Miranda Priestley, once untouchable and still played by Meryl Streep, now finds herself navigating a fashion world in flux. Also returning are Anne Hathaway as Andy Sachs and Stanley Tucci as Nigel. At the center of the story is the crisis facing print media and the fate of Runway magazine, now resting in the hands of former assistant-turned-power executive Emily, played by Emily Blunt. The Devil Wears Prada 2 hits cinemas on May 1.
Am I having a hallucination? Hi, Emily.
You also know her?
We were at Runway at the same time, Miranda.
Really? Where was I?
I didn't realize it's been 20 years since the first one.
How did they not age?
I don't
Right?
know. How did we not age? I'm kidding. But I was gonna... you set it up for me. I had to defend us.
What? 20 years, you're right. 20
Right?
Thou didn't see it in the theaters, did you? We saw it in the theaters.
I probably just saw it on DVD.
You know what? I might have also seen it on DVD.
On DVD?
Yeah, instead of the theater.
DVD? Sa Quiapo.
Uy, crime yun
Oo.
Umamin ka.
Exactly. Uy,
Ako
I didn't go to...
DVD. I bought it.
You bought the real DVDs
I bought it in
back then.
HMV.
Oh my gosh, but amazing. They are back. They look like they haven't aged. Amazing.
And the
Meryl
storyline
Streep.
looks interesting.
Oh, very much
Usually
so.
when there's a sequel, it doesn't really live up to, the first one, but this one looks interesting.
Exactly.
We're excited for that. And that will do it for us here on The Big Story this Tuesday. Thank you so much for watching.
We're back tomorrow at 8 p.m. See you then.
Kapatid, we are one news, all sides, all the time. Have a good night.